other subjects in terms of what else we can do besides vaccines and things that have to do with our health, our health, is that in the trends section, if we talk about things that are trending or that we're going to see more, this subject of personal protective equipment, PPE, personal protective equipment, we're going to see this is one of the areas also that's going to just really leap in ways of coming forward. So what do I mean by that? Well, you know, not just masks and visors or whatever we've been seeing as well, but there is scientific, somewhat amount of evidence that we can clothe ourselves in antimicrobial clothing and other things that that prevent contagion of different kinds. So, you know, a long time ago, they came out with clothing that has mosquito repellent in it. And there's other clothing that is made for specific job functions, like for firemen. And there's things that are made for the law enforcement industry that has bulletproof. So now, because we're living in these interesting times of heightened everything, this is going to be something that the general population is going to want access to as well. And so the clothing makers and other people are more than happy to give us these, and they're trying to as well pair with the technology companies and the science industry and the clothing industry to come up with this personal protective gear. So what do I mean by that is that there could be any kind of clothing that you would wear that would also protect from bacteria. There is clothing that could be made that would help protesters protect from some physical damage. And so brand name manufacturers are going to be making this. They are already. So if you haven't heard about it, you will hear about it. I doubt that it will be inexpensive. And the idea then is to work with the clothing company so it can be somewhat fashion directed as well, and with sizes and things, and as well for children. So this started somewhat when, unfortunately, here in the United States, we have had all the school shootings and things, which is another disaster. And so there have been ideas of how to create not only bulletproof backpacks, or backpacks that might have like airbags or something in them that can be used in the front of the body as body armor, but now as well clothing that is very thin, but in some ways is made somewhat of Kevlar or other kinds of materials to protect our children. It sounds awful. It sounds awful to even be talking about this, and yet we're talking about this. And mentioning it as well for people who go to big public events, rallies, concerts, protests, to have protective gear that they can wear as well. So manufacturers that have been involved in the sports industry, in making things for extreme sports and different things, they are all on board for this. So this is something else that you will see as well. Even people who live in busy cities where there have been unfortunate events happen, we are going to become more interested in any kind of thing that we can do that feels like it is protecting us. And in some ways, we may look to those things more than a vaccine or something, which we're not sure will cover so many different ways that these things can mutate. So I did want to throw that out there. And what else did I want to say? Let's see. In talking about science as well, science has become almost like this godlike figure. in our life. And I'm just going to say now, since it's about 11:20, that we'll run just a little bit late today, but not too much. I'm just going to finish this up and take a few of our questions so that we don't run too late. So science, we have elevated this. We kind of demoted religion and said, you know what, now that science has told us so much about, the Big Bang and how universes are created and all these other things, it didn't seem like the Bible and our ideas of God and religion were as relevant to the times that we are living in now. So in some ways, as a world, we sort of demoted or moved religion over a little bit, and we gave science this high position, the throne. And so we've been looking at that. We've been looking at science, technology, discoveries, and all the different ways in which we're growing and able to access information and knowledge and see far into space and get answers that we didn't have before. But we're coming into a time now, and this virus thing might be one of those demonstrations as well, is that science also will just not have the answers, or won't have them soon enough to satisfy some of the things of global proportion that are having in the world. And there's going to be a backlash to that. So we're not seeing it yet right now, but let's say if this vaccine comes out and the side effects are worse than the virus itself, we're going to blame that, because we are a blaming population. We're not going to say, thank you for trying. We're going to say, we gave you billions of dollars and that's the best thing you came up with, and people are getting sick all over the world. So there will be a big backlash against science for saying what they could do or what they didn't do or what they were going to provide. And technology as well, as science and biotechnology and some of those things merge as well. We've thought of technologies in some way as these darlings, darlings of our world, coming up with our tech toys and our phones and so sorry. And they haven't let us down too often, but here and there and now they're going to, or they're about to. So there's a backlash against that. And something else will happen. There's a mystery, a scandal. There's something else that's brewing here in our scientific stage here. Something that is being withheld. Something that was known, but only known by certain elite people. And because we're in a time right now where everything is going to come out, spill out, fall out, be outed, whatever it is. So that will be found as well. And it's not going to be a small thing. It's going to be a big thing, not just one company, but something like they all knew or they all did, in some ways similar to what we found out about opioid crisis and some of the things that were withheld from people. In the opioid thing, it's about how addictive some of these things were. But in this, it's something else. And I can't tell you exactly what it is yet, except that it's on the horizon. And since it's on the horizon, I see it. So a backlash against science, who we trusted. And that's going to create another kind of an inner struggle within us. Because if we have, in some ways, demoted religion from being, this big father-like system of help for us here on the earth, and we elevated science, and so now here's science, this sort of godlike thing that has all the answers that we've been looking for, things that we didn't know about, things about our bodies and minds and computers and space, and then something happens to knock that off. Now we're kind of stuck between these two polarities. And if we don't trust the corporations, and if we don't trust the governments, and so what happens? What happens to a culture or a people if we start to feel that there really isn't somewhere to turn to? Another reason why I said earlier, stay awake. Watch what happens, observe what happens, because if we can just stay from that place of observing, we won't get caught on that little, the hamster wheel, the squirrel, the little mouse wheel going around and around with this thing. We can observe it from a place of sanity, from a place of discovery, from a place of finding the best place to stand in the center and observe the world as it is shown to us, and not join something that may be a pattern that has replayed itself many times in our history. So it's really important not to jump on that wheel and then get stuck on it and not get off of it so easily. So watch some of these dramas unfold, become interested in them, talk about them, all the things that we're all doing, but don't become so polarized about what they could mean or who's doing what to who, that you're so caught up in it that you're not looking for where the real growth is or where the deeper understanding is. Because there are a lot of these, so many things are happening and more is going to be added. What you're seeing now is the beginning of this cycle. We've already crossed the threshold. We're in, some of the initial chapters of this time, and a lot of things are going to be flying in a lot of different directions. And it's easy to get caught up in it because these things affect our lives, our families. So pay attention, but be careful. So the only other thing I want to say before I take more of your questions just is that space travel, we're heading out there really fast again now. We are seriously looking for where humanity can colonize now. Seriously looking for where to put the first colony on the moon, where to put the first colony on Mars. As many countries, corporations are putting as much stuff, backing as many things as we can into space. A few reasons for that is that not only is it the next frontier, other than studying what's melting at the Arctic and at the Antarctic, and that being very interesting now, there's not as many frontiers to conquer on the Earth now. It's very crowded here, and it's very owned here. So space being available in places and there being resources out there, and humanity being both curious and greedy, it is another big push that you will see. And again, I say more the corporations than the governments, because NASA is not the one sending the rockets out to space now. Elon Musk is. And so there will be others like him. And this is big move and big push into space. And people have asked me a little bit to look at, some of the economic things that are happening. And I won't say as much about that now, except for, the big crash in some ways that a lot of people are afraid of. Not yet. And the reason for it is almost the bad reason, is that the pandemic or whatever it is, it's very interesting to the world. It's very interesting to people who have money. It's very interesting to people that play with economies, and there are people that play with them. So, and in that way, there's money to be made out there about the pandemic, with the pandemic, maybe even like with things like the clothing that I described, maybe in immunology and vaccines. And as long as there's money to be made by people that want to make it, it doesn't have enough interest in it to take the economy down at this time. But when it happens, there won't be as much warning. We know that. And so it's a good idea to keep our eyes open about that. And I'm no expert on things like that. I just look at things and share what I look at a little bit. So let me just take a few more of your questions. I'd love to hear from someone. Will cash be going away anytime soon? Yeah, it's already on the way out. There's not a lot of cash out there. People are making fun of the coin shortages and things like that. And soon we'll sort of discover we don't really need coins, And once we discover that we really don't need coins, the next thing we'll discover is that we don't really need money either. And also, when it's not money, or when it's cards or numbers or anything like that, it's easier to track everything that needs to be tracked. So, there will be other reasons for it, thinking that cash is not as clean or anything as well, and not as easily to transport. So cash will be on the way out. It'll be here for a while. It'll be this decade. So by sometime in the next decade, there just won't be much reason for it anymore, other than for real small specific things. Almost like kids used to have coin banks and adults didn't. It'll almost be like cash is a little bit something for kids to be learning about money or something, but the rest of the world won't. It'll go that way. Your question is, does democratic socialism stand a chance? Every kind of different understanding of government stands a chance right now, including total anarchy, because we know that what we have right now is not working. In the United States, especially, the model that much of the world has looked toward, it is becoming clear that it may not be a true republic's democracy that is available here, or there is democracy for some and not for others. So all of these things make it so that this system of government is at risk, and it will in some way need to yield to something else. Those that uphold this system of government are also not, they're not trustworthy. They are old school when the newer generations are wanting something else. And so for a variety of reasons, it's no longer working. And the only way that it will work for a while longer is if the government needs to continue to pump money into the different economies. It's the government that can do that more than other systems. So that will make it hold on to its power a little bit more. But you have seen the gridlock that is in the system of government. It was designed for a certain time that we have outgrown. We've outgrown ourselves in population, in how we think, in how we manage our lives, and so it's not working very well anymore. But no one has a better plan yet. So democratic socialism is one method or one idea, but for everyone that says it will work, there are models that will prove that that it can't work or work very much longer either. It cannot sustain. It will not be sustained. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But certainly there will be different models entertained as well. So how are we doing? We're just a few minutes past our time here. And if I don't see more questions, then maybe I will say it's been wonderful. Okay. I'll just look at the one last thing here I didn't get to is to say a little bit more about education and micro schools and micro learnings is again a new term, because the lower grades of school, the elementary grades of school, are also looking how to respond to an education system that's in crisis as well. And parents are not educators, and they know that. They'll be the first ones to tell you that. But children also need ways of learning that are more than two-dimensional, more than just a computer. So it'll be harder for them to get together some of the virtual tools that the universities will have. The money and the budgets won't provide that. So micro schooling with much less students and more of an experiential kind of learning is what I see. So different jobs, different people that hold jobs in which they're at large enough places will have experiential projects, an experiential way of learning, almost like what I want to say on the job learning, but for children. So ways of experimenting with life and learning that are not in a typical school classroom environment, and ways of rotating from one to the other so that it keeps things interesting and yet at the same time keeps them safe. And I can't say much more about that yet, but as it, and schools will go to normal. This thing with the virus will fall away and schools will go back with much more care, and again, less children in the classrooms. There may be opportunities for children to learn at university schools if they are being less, the brick and mortar schools, if they are being less used, then maybe they will be used by younger children as well. That's as much as I can say now, but all of these things are all happening. They're all happening now. They're all looking for solutions. And the solutions that you see, the first ones that you see, will not be the best. They will be the trials that go out there. We've got to experiment and try different things and see what's working and what's not working. And it serves us to support change. It will not serve us to say, let's go back to what we were doing. We know it was not working fine. It was not working for all. So not to go back to whatever we thought was normal, other than, you know, having a cup of coffee at the corner or a restaurant or something that I'm sure we would all like to feel different than it does today. But we are in new waters, uncharted territory, and to the best of your ability that you can, look forward to what's coming. Just look forward. Just keep looking forward and seeing what comes, just with the idea, oh, isn't that interesting? Oh, this is also changing. Oh, that's also different. Just with a natural curiosity about things, and you will feel much less anxiety about it all that way. So I just want to say thank you very, very much for joining me and sharing this time with me. And if you enjoy this, then we'll do it a little bit more often, twice a year, 3 times a year, maybe. So thank you. And until next time, namaste.